Okay, B'ezrat Hashem Na'aseh Natzliach. With Hashem's help, we should be successful. We are going to learn about the laws of Shabbat today, specifically the famous situation of the burning Osvo. The burning Osvo. Shabbat morning, there's a ritual for some people. They come into their kitchen with their parents and they say, "Do you smell it? Do you smell it? You smell the Osvo? Wow, it's going to be amazing." And then they go and they say, "L'shem yichud," and they open the pot and they see, oh no, the Osvo doesn't have enough water. It's burning. We're going to have people over. Even worse, Kudo is coming. What are we going to say? So, Mr. Abo, the Osvo is burning. B'ezrat Hashem, you'll be married very soon. Your wife's going to ask you, Osvo is burning. Chodelets, what do we do? You're the father of the household. You have to give halacha. They're going to rely on you. What do you say?
Look for a goy.
Look for a goy. What is it going to help? What are you going to do? He's going to pour water. Nice. I like that idea. Why can't I pour the water? Yeah. Well, that's what we want to know. Some people say, "Oh, well, what's the problem?" Go to the urn. The urn is hot water, right? Take some hot water from the urn. It's hot. This is hot. The pot is hot. Put the hot water in the hot pot. Nobody died, right? Nothing's going to happen. So, is this something valid or not? What's the reason you're allowed, or what's the reason you're not allowed? The reason you're allowed, maybe you would say, is what? They're both hot. The potential problem is cooking. Maybe you're cooking the water. But since it's hot already, right? So we have to see what the potential issue is there in this case. And maybe there's other solutions that we don't need to rely on this putting hot water. But in general, we have to discuss another question, and then we'll be able to come back to this question. The other question is, what foods am I allowed to put on the Plata on Shabbat? Let's say you have baksht from last night. You ever ate baksht from last night on Shabbat day? You do it all the time, right? Are you allowed to put baksht to heat up on the Plata? Yeah, why not? Let's say I have a soup from last night. Can I put a soup from last night, Friday night, on Shabbat day on the Plata?
Yeah. No.
Yes? Why not? Why not?
Only if you froze it.
Why not? Let's say it's just a cold soup. Am I allowed to put it back on the Plata?
Yeah. No.
Machloket.
It's always answerable.
Nice. If you're a Jew, you just have to say machloket, and you got the right answer, because it's always a machloket, right? So the question is, what is the problem of putting a soup back onto the Plata on Shabbat? Yes, the halacha is it is forbidden. In most situations, there are a few situations where it's permitted. According to Sfaradim, it would be asur to put back a cold bowl of soup or pot of soup from the fridge onto the Plata on Shabbat morning, or even Friday night if it got cold. It will be asur. The question is why? Seemingly, you could ask a simple question. It was cooked from before Shabbat, right? Everything in the soup, the matzah balls in the soup itself was cooked before Shabbat. So I'm not cooking on Shabbat. We know that one of the 39 melachot on Shabbat is cooking, right? In the Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat Daf Ayin Gimel 73a lists all 39 melachot of Shabbat, all 39 forbidden labors, and one of them is ve'ha'ofeh, the one who bakes. And the Gemara explains this means not just the baker, it means the person who cooks on Shabbat. Cooking on Shabbat is one of the 39 labors. Don't be that person who makes a mistake and says, well, it says don't work on Shabbat, you have to rest on Shabbat. You know what it means to work? It means to work is don't go to work. But it doesn't say you can't put food in the Plata on Shabbat. It doesn't say you can't turn on a fire on Shabbat, even though it did in last week's parasha, Lo tavaru esh b'chol moshvatechem. But a person can rationalize and think what work is. A person has to realize work and labor forbidden in the Torah on Shabbat is learned from the Mishkan, is learned from the labor they used to do in the temple, and therefore work is not what we think today, work as a regular term that people use. Rather, labor used in the Torah is referring to the work they did in the Mishkan. So you could have a car that's pushed to start, right? You just push the button, and what happened? The car turned on, and you did any work? All I did is press the button. It's not work, but I broke Shabbat. How? Well, is that called working? Yes, because you created a fire inside the engine, and that is considered the same work they did in the temple, which was turning on a fire. So you have to realize, not always because it seems to you it's permitted. What did I do? It can't be breaking Shabbat. Person has to know, if you don't learn, the Mishnah Berurah says, if you don't learn the laws of Shabbat, most likely you're breaking Shabbat every Shabbat. So a person has to make sure to learn the laws of Shabbat. So, by the laws of cooking, we have to know, just because something was cooked from before Shabbat, you're allowed to put it on the Plata on Shabbat. So this is why we have to learn a Gemara. The Gemara says, Masechet Shabbat, Daf Kuf Mem Hey, 145b. It says, Kol b'Shabbat b'chamin, anything that was in hot water from before Shabbat, it was boiled in hot water. Shorino to b'chamin b'Shabbat, you're allowed to put it in hot water on Shabbat again. You're allowed to put it into a boiling hot water. And it's not a problem of recooking. However, there is a Gemara that says in Masechet Shabbat Daf Lamed Daled that the Rava said you're not allowed to bury a hot food into the ground before Shabbat or on Shabbat to keep its warmth, because maybe you're going to find that it's cold, and Rashi says you're going to come to boil it again, you're going to come to cook it again, and even if it was cooked, Rashi says there is cooking after cooking on something that was cooked already. Then there's another Gemara that says in Masechet Shabbat Daf Yud Chet Amud Bet that you're not allowed to stir. The Gemara says maybe you're going to come to stir the pot, and the Rashi says, what's the problem stirring the pot? When you stir something on the fire, it is considered cooking it even though it's already cooked. So you see, again, there are sources in the Gemara, one way, that cooking after cooking doesn't apply by a cooked item, and then there's some sources that say there is a problem of re-cooking things. So therefore, how do we make sense of these Gemaras? So there's a Machloket Rishonim. What do the Rishonim say? The Tur says, depends. If it's a solid, so then even if it got cold, you're allowed to put it back on the Plata as long as it's fully cooked. But if it's a liquid, you're not allowed to put it back on the fire because if it got cold, because that's considered cooking. Why would something that's liquid, if I cooked it from before Shabbat and I put it on the Plata on Shabbat, why would that be considered cooking? Yeah? Mr. Ben-Gir, you have an answer? I cooked a soup before Shabbat. I put it on the Plata to get hot again. I broke Shabbat by cooking. I already cooked this thing from before Shabbat. What would be the answer? What would be the reason? Yeah, Yosef, you heard the question? Yeah. Liquid is subject to the laws of bishul achar bishul, recooking. Why? What's the logic? What's the understanding?
Because it always can be cooked more.
It always could be cooked more. By a rice, it's cooked already. What is there more to cook? By a soup, you could cook it more?
Yes.
So the Mishnah Berurah says, unbelievable idea. He says, according to the Tur, the understanding is like this. What's the point of cooking a liquid? You want it hot, right? That's the difference. That's a special part about cooking a liquid. A solid, if I take a raw salmon, is it the same after I cook it and make it a cooked salmon? No, it's different. It's completely different, right? By a solid, once you cook it, it changed completely. By a liquid, when I cook it, the only thing that changed is what? Is the temperature. It's the same liquid. Therefore, when it gets cold, says the Mishnah Berurah, it's as if it was never cooked already. You understand? Because the whole idea you gain by cooking liquid is making it hot. But once it became cold, it lost the concept that it was cooked already. So therefore, if I put it on the Plata again, it will be subject to the laws of cooking. Yeah?
What if it wasn't like completely cold, but like some hot?
Scalding hot. How hot is considered scalding hot? Anybody know?
Put your finger inside.
Put your finger inside. What if you're a tough guy and I'm a weakling?
Boiling.
So who do we go by? So the Gemara actually says that scalding hot, which is the benchmark, is the number we go by. But what's considered cooking or not? If it's above scalding hot, you're allowed to put it back. If it's below scalding hot, you're not allowed to. That's a case where what? The Gemara says where a baby's stomach would feel uncomfortable, would feel burnt if you would touch it. If you take something that's scalding hot, you want to know if it's scalding hot? If you take it to a baby's stomach, you'll feel uncomfortable. But we don't have to do that. The Ben Ish Chai gives us a better rule of thumb. The Ben Ish Chai writes, if you can't put it in your mouth, it means it's scalding hot. You understand? If your mouth will get burnt, if you put it in your mouth, that is a sign that it's scalding hot, and therefore, that's the rule you could go by. Now, the Rosh also says the same thing. He says that once something was cooked, ma'achar ben durusai, halfway, he says that maybe it is not subject to the laws of cooking anymore. However, if it's considered a liquid, over there, it would be also considered cooking once it got cold. Who was Ben Durusai? Ben Durusai was a famous...
Amora?
No. He was a Ganav. And he was always on the run. And the way he would eat his food was only cooking it halfway. He would never be able to stay in one place and fully cook a meal. He would cook it like halfway, banomash, eat it, and keep going on the run. So the Gemara says, how do you call a food that was half cooked? It's called ma'achar ben durusai, the food of ben durusai. So the Rambam, he argues. The Rambam says, anything that was fully cooked, doesn't matter if it was a liquid, doesn't matter if it was a solid, does not have the problem of recooking. Very lenient Rambam. Then we have the Rashba. The Rashba says once something was cooked, ma'achar ben durusai. What do we say ma'achar ben durusai means? Half cooked, right? Something was cooked, half cooked. Also over there does not apply the rules of recooking. Doesn't matter if it's liquid, doesn't matter if it's a solid. According to them, it's very lenient, right? According to Rambam, according to Rashba, you have a soup, it got cold. Since you cooked it from before Shabbat, you're allowed to put it back on the plata. No problem whatsoever. Oh, so what do we hold like? Who's the halacha like? Says the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Shin Yudchet Seif Dalet. Shulchan Aruch says like this: something that was fully cooked, it is subject to the laws of cooking if it got cold. When it was a liquid. But if it was a solid, if it was fully cooked, you're allowed to put it back on the plata. You're allowed to heat it up on Shabbat. So it comes out, according to Shulchan Aruch, we follow like the Rosh and the Tur, that if it was of rice, it was a meat, it was a fish, there's a dry food, you're allowed to put it back on the plata even though it got cold, as opposed to a soup, as opposed to a stew, as opposed to something that has liquid, you're not allowed to put it back on the plata if it got cold. If you did remove the soup pot from the plata and you want to put it back, you have to have some conditions fulfilled. You have to have in mind to put it back. You have to put it in you cannot put it down on a place where it is considered for storage, like the floor, and it has to be that it's still scalding hot. Ashkenazim are more lenient, but Sfaradim has to be that the pot is still scalding hot in order to be able to put it back on the plata. Yes?
You said that you're allowed to put solid food on the plata. If you put solid food, aren't you changing the form?
Why? It was cooked before Shabbat. It was cooked before Shabbat.
Yeah, but you're changing the form on it if you're making it hotter.
How am I changing the form?
Like, if you put chicken, the juice of it will come out.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a food. He's asking a good question. We're talking about a food that has both solid and liquid. What do we do when we have a food that has both solid and liquid? That's what we're going to talk about after. Well, now comes out that you're allowed to put a solid, you're not allowed to put back a liquid. What if it has both, right? Let's say you have a fish, a salmon fish, Friday night, spicy salmon, that has a lot of juice. So what do we go by? We go by the fish, that's a solid, or because it has a lot of juice, so we treat it as a liquid, and therefore you're not allowed.
Majority.
What do you say? Majority. What does it mean, majority?
Ikr. What's the ikr?
What's the main part of the dish? The fish or the liquid? Would you eat the fish without the liquid?
It also can be a substantial amount of liquid though.
What substantial amount?
It covers the entire fish, let's say. Let's say you have a thing of liquid and you have a fish and you just put it in, it's cooked, everything. You just want that's being fused. I would say that's not allowed. There's certain, I don't know what the parameters are.
Good. So therefore comes Ravad Yosef alav shalom, and he says you go by majority. But this majority, they explain, it doesn't mean 51%, 49%. It means when you have the dish, do you consider the dry the main and the liquid like not important? Or do you consider the dry the main and the liquid is very important? For example, there is a Persian dish. You guys got to help me out on this one. There's a Persian dish that's like a stew. It has celery in it. It's green.
Yeah, that's important over there.
Right? Over there, what is it called?
Gandhi?
No, not Gandhi. Gandhis are those big like matzah ball things, right? No, there's another Persian dish that's a stew. Forgot what it's called.
Fine, true.
Yeah. Anyways, so over there, you must serve the meat and the rice with the liquid, with stew. You can't have it just the meat and rice. Let's say I have a bowl that has mostly meat and rice, but there's a little bit of water. But the point is, I have to serve it with the water, with the stew, with the liquid. Over there, that would be a sewer to put back on the plata because I want the liquid also. In a case where I don't care about the liquid, the main thing is the fish, the main thing is the meat, the main thing is the solid. Even if it has a little bit of liquid, it will be permitted to put it back in the plata. And therefore, that is the rule in regards to that.
What's a little bit?
A little bit, meaning not so significant. Meaning, I don't care if there's liquid, I don't care if there isn't, as long as...
You cannot care about it, it'll still be a lot.
No. Obviously, we're talking about a case where most of the food is dry. It just has some sauce to it, but I don't really care about the sauce. I don't really want the sauce to get heated up. It doesn't matter to me if it's heated up or not.
I was sesame chicken.
Oh, good. That's a good example. You don't care if there's so much sauce, right? You want sesame chicken. Yeah.
What if you're going to drink that liquid also?
So at the end of the day, since
You
It's
want
drinkable, I don't think
you
it's
rather
allowed
that,
there.
but if that comes about also, I'll take it. You know what I mean?
right, so
Does
the
that count also?
so over there, in that case, since your intention wasn't, Ravadi explains, since your intention wasn't to cook that, it's like something
He
wasn't.
wants to drink it.
Right, no, but when he put it on, what did he have in mind to eat?
Fish.
The fish. Now, after the fact, what happened? Oh, there's liquid, okay, so I'll drink it. But in the moment he put it, he didn't care that the sauce should get heated up, so it's as if it was done without his intention. And on top of that, according to some poskim, we said before that what? The Rambam and the Rashba says, you're allowed to heat up liquids also, because it was cooked from before Shabbat. So you have sveka in a way, Ravadi explains in Chazon Ovadia. So therefore, that's why in those cases it will be allowed. The Rambam says even a bigger chidush. The Rambam says if you cook something that doesn't need to be cooked, that's also exempt. An apple you can eat raw. If you cook an apple on Shabbat, according to the Rambam, it is considered patur. You didn't do any isur deoraita. It's considered, you did not, because according to him, what's cooking? Wow. Cooking means I made it edible. It was edible before. I was able to eat it before, so I didn't do anything special to say I cooked it. If the person has to understand that the Rishonim argue on how to understand the melacha of cooking on Shabbat. Wow. So therefore, according to the Rosh and the Tur, a solid was cooked before Shabbat, so there's no problem reheating it. A liquid, it lost its special status of cooked because it became cold. The whole idea of a cooked liquid is special because it's hot. Once it got cold, that's it. It's considered uncooked. But according to Rambam and Rashba, no, once it was cooked from before Shabbat, that's it. It's considered cooked already. There's no problem reheating it.
According to them, maybe you could still drink it, like even if it's cold.
Yeah, that also. Okay, so now back to our case. The Osvo is burning. Shabbat morning. Osvo is burning. We don't know what to do. Kudo is coming over. We got to serve everybody. There's going to be 12 people at the table. What do we do? The question, the advice, we're going to go back to Nathan's advice in a second. But what the first initial gut reaction is, put hot water from the urn. What's the problem putting hot water from the urn? So what do we say? The halacha is we follow the Rosh and the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch quoted, and they say that what? By liquid, there is such a thing as recooking it. The question is, did the water from the urn get cold when I poured it into the pot, and therefore I'm recooking the liquid, or did it not?
It's already hot.
It's already hot. It's very.
So if you pour it straight, maybe it's not.
Oh, so now we have to get into the discussion of kli rishon, kli sheni.
Yeah.
That means when I pour something from a cup, right? Let's say this is the urn, right? Or let's say this is a little pot that was boiling on the Plata from before Shabbat. Yeah. And I take it, and this is the initial vessel that the water was cooked in, and I pour it into another pot. What's the status of the water when it's in the air? Does it get cooled off?
Yes.
A little bit.
Not to the point where it's not good.
Oh yeah? How do you know that? You tested it?
I think if it...
You stuck a thermometer while you poured it in the air?
No, but like, I don't think it would... How can you tell us?
So the Yerushalmi says that, according to one opinion, Irui Kli Rishon is Kli Sheni. Pouring from a Kli Rishon, that water has a status of Kli Sheni already. And when something has Kli Sheni, and you pour it back into Kli Rishon, right? Because the pot of food is the first vessel. In the air, the water is considered a second vessel. It goes back to the first vessel and it recooks. So according to that, it would be a problem to add hot water even straight from the urn. Because in the air, it loses the status of a Kli Rishon.
Maybe it's really hot and maybe that.
Oh, so you would be right if Shulchan Aruch didn't say anything. But since Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Resh Nun Gimel not to do this, so we can't make such a seika. He says you're not allowed to do exactly what we described. We're going to see exactly what. But first, we have to realize this halacha comes from the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Resh Nun Gimel, not in the laws of cooking on Shabbat, rather it's in the laws of returning objects to the fire. Says Shulchan Aruch, Yesh limchot, you should protest. Beyad noagim, those who have the custom. Lahatmin b'bod yom, they usually bury a kumkum. You know what a kumkum is? It's an urn. People used to bury an urn of hot water from before Shabbat, and they have it for what? This whole urn is only a little urn is full of water for what? In order, in case my food burns, I'm going to take this water and put it into my food if it's burning on Shabbat. Says Shulchan Aruch, you should be protesting those people who do it. You should tell them not to do it. He says, why? He quotes Rabbeinu Yonah, who says this problem exactly. First, the problem Rabbeinu Yonah says is maybe the water is not so hot because they used to bury it and didn't keep its heat good enough, so therefore it didn't stay scalding hot. And another issue is that maybe in the air it cooled and it's recooking when you put it into the pot. Who is Rabbeinu Yonah? Anybody know who Rabbeinu Yonah is? Rabbeinu Yonah was who wrote the Shaarei Teshuvah. Yes, the famous book, the Shaarei Teshuvah, the Gates of Repentance. He lived in the year 1180. He passed away in 1263. He is related to
Rashi?
the Ramban. His mother, Ramban's mother was a sister to Rabbeinu Yonah's father. If you're Bukharan, you would have followed that.
So they were like around the same time.
What? Yes. And what? And Rabbeinu Yonah was a very big anti-Rambam. He was very against Maimonides. And there was such a controversy at the time of the Rambam's writings. There was even Goyim who jumped onto the situation and took the Rambam's books, put it into wagons, and set it on fire in the street. That's how much there was fighting against the Rambam. You understand? And then what did the Goyim started doing? They said, hey, if they're burning the Rambam books, so let's take the Talmud. And they started taking Talmuds and put it into big wagons in the street and set it on fire. So it was a big Chil Hashem, and the Rabbeinu Yonah felt so bad that he was part of this whole thing. He said, I'm going to do Teshuvah. Right? The Rabbeinu Yonah who wrote Shaarei Teshuvah, he did Teshuvah. What did he do? He said, I'm going to make a trip to all the way to the grave of the Rambam. And he said, I'm going to go ask at his grave, Mechila, forgiveness for this that I went against them, and they ended up burning his books because of me. So what did he do? He went and he wanted to take a minyan. Right? We know Rambam writes in the Chot Shuvah, if you've hurt somebody, you cannot get forgiven from Hashem unless that person forgives you. But what happens if the person who you hurt passed away? So what do? You're stuck, no? How is he going to forgive you? Rambam says you take 10 people, you go to his grave. So that's what Rabbeinu Yonah wanted to do. He wanted to go to Rambam's grave with 10 people, ask forgiveness. Ended up being, he started traveling, he got to Barcelona, Spain, and then he got to Toledo, and then the Jewish people there said, Rabbi, teach us, Rabbi, teach us, Rabbi, teach us. He got stuck there, and ended up being, he died. He died on the way to go to the Rambam's grave in order to ask for forgiveness, and he didn't make it. Wow. So, there's a famous mashal, actually two famous mashalim that the Rabbeinu Yonah says in his book Shaarei Teshuvah. Anybody who wants to feel, I want to do Teshuvah, you feel like, I don't feel like doing Teshuvah, Teshuvah is not so important, I need something to motivate me, you should learn a little bit of Shaarei Teshuvah, it'll wake you up in a second. It'll give you like a big slap and wake you up. So Rabbeinu Yonah writes in Shaarei Teshuvah, he says, if you have the ability to do Teshuvah, why aren't you doing it? He says, what is it like, a person who has the ability to do Teshuvah and doesn't do it? It's like three guys in jail. And they find a spoon and they dig their way out and they have a tunnel. And one guy says, I'm not going. I'm scared. I'm going to stay. I want to be a good boy. I want to sit my sentence. So he sits, and in the morning, the guards come, they see only one guy left, and they see a huge hole. They start beating him up, and hitting him, and making him suffer. He says, why? I'm the good one. I'm the one who stayed. I didn't leave. You should have punished them. He says, if you saw the ability to leave, and you didn't leave, that means something's wrong with you. We want you to go back into society. We want you to change your ways. You were supposed to sit here and think, oh, if only I could come out and be a better person, I would have tried my life again, and you stayed here and you gave up. That's why you didn't learn the purpose of sitting here. Therefore, that's why we have to hit you. So therefore, he says that's what a person who has the ability to do teshuvah, and he doesn't do teshuvah, what are you doing? You have the ability to escape. You have the ability to change your ways. You have the ability to go and undo all the averot you did and you don't do it. What's wrong with you? So from Shamayim, God forbid, there could be a judgment on the person if he doesn't take the ability to do teshuvah by the hands, by the horns, as they say. So he says another mashal. He says that a person has to do teshuvah every single day of his life, because you don't know when the last day of your life is going to be. Right? It's very. They say, right? The goyim, they say YOLO. Right? They say you only live once. So a person has to make sure that he utilizes every moment. He says the mashal is a lady who just got married, right? She just got married. So she always makes sure that her husband's going to come home anytime soon. She always makes sure she looks the part. She makes herself look beautiful, because any second her husband's supposed to come home from work, she wants to find favor in her husband's eyes. So he says that's how a person has to look at himself with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Any moment, we don't know when the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to call us, the time to meet him, we have to be ready. So we have to always prepare ourselves, look the part, and do teshuvah. So therefore, Rabbeinu Yonah, who is quoted by the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Rosh Gimel, Seif Daled, he says you should not pour the hot water into the urn. Ashkenazim, they permit taking hot water from the urn and putting it into the cholent, because Ashkenazim are more lenient in general, they don't follow the ruling like we do by cooking liquids. They rely on the Rashba and the Rambam that you're allowed, they permit putting back a soup that is not scalding hot, even if it's a little bit warm, they permit it to put it back in the plata, and therefore they permit putting hot water into the pot that's burning. Yes, Mr. McGill.
Issue with opening the lid?
Good, very good question. So now, if they know that the opening the lid, he's asking because there's a lot of times a lot of steam and a lot of droplets that form on the pot lid when you take it out. Over there, if a person's intention is not to cook that, he's not doing it with intention of that, even though it happens, it's permitted. But someone who wants machmir, to wipe it all off, and before he puts it on, tavo ala bracha, but he doesn't have to because that is not his intention. Now, when it comes to other potential solutions, there are other solutions that the sages recommend in the case of a burning osvo. They say if you take a cooking bag and fill it up with water and put it into the pot from before Shabbat. You take your osvo, you put it on the plata before Shabbat, and you stick a bag of cooking bag with water in there, and you let the water cook in the bag with the osvo together, and that way the water doesn't mix because it's in the bag. And just in case if there's not enough water inside the osvo, you pop the bag, the water comes out, and the water is always the same temperature as the osvo because they were cooking together the whole time. So therefore, there's no problem of recooking the liquid, and you have that extra life, if you would say, was saved up in the back over there. That's one solution. Another solution is you could put another pot under your osvo. Put a pot under in between the plata and the osvo, and that will slow the burning process of the osvo. You'll save what you get, and maybe you'll have extra country tadigi that week. Yeah.
When opening the lid, also, is it a problem about the top layer of the chalent that it cools off because it's exposed?
I have to double check. Not off the top of my head, I don't recall seeing such a problem.
Do you have to take the pot off of the heater?
Off the plata?
Yeah, off the chalent.
In order to take off the lid?
And if you want to take out chalent, do you have to take out the actual pot from the chalent?
Crock pot? You're talking about crock pot?
So what if you're taking it as you're
Oh,
taking
crock
it
pot.
out?
Crock pot is a whole different discussion. I don't want to get into that right now. We can have a different class about how to serve chalent from a crock pot.
So this is just from plata?
This is just a plata, osvo, and a pot, and a crock pot's a little bit different. A lot of hatmana problems, a lot of shayya problems.
Are you allowed to serve from there? Of a plata?
So again,
Not as a
yeah.
And some fall back inside, it's okay?
Yeah, not on an open fire. Open fire is no.
What if you take it off and you serve it and you put it right back on?
Without ever putting it down?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
What if you put it down?
Osvo, you have to know, is treated as a liquid food.
Some osvos.
Oh yeah, some osvos are very thick.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a solid. Treated as a solid.
Yeah. No, sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, but I saw it with it has a lot of oil and whatever.
soup.
Yeah. That's most of those osvo that I see. I haven't been around that much. I haven't seen everybody
They
osvo.
don't have teeth to
The purpose is not the purpose is the rice.
No, but over there you want the oil, right? It has to be that you only want the rice. You don't care about the other
So
oil.
if you don't care about the oil,
Right. But again, at the right. So now, I'll end off with this case, and we'll call it a night, and we'll be B'ezrat Hashem. We have Arvit, right? So we have a case like this. There was a situation where somebody's osvo did not look so good. It was on the weak side on the water levels, and also it looked a bit pale. So what happened? There was somebody in the house who wasn't so knowledgeable. They went ahead and they added a can of tomato sauce into the osvo on Shabbat, and they threw it in there. What is the halacha now? Are you allowed to eat this osvo? And also, let's say somebody, even though we're saying you shouldn't take water from the urn and put it onto the osvo. Let's say somebody did it. Before you found out the halacha, somebody in your house just did it without asking. What is the halacha? You're allowed to eat that osvo. What do you guys say? What?
After Shabbat.
Yes.
I think if it was already good,
So we have to learn one rule. Even though usually things that are done on Shabbat in a forbidden way, you're not allowed to benefit from.
on Shabbat.
On Shabbat, right? There is a difference between on purpose and not on purpose. But for argument's sake, we all know that halacha is nobody is allowed to benefit from it, even though it's done by accident. So in this case, maybe you'll say he did it by accident because he didn't know it's not allowed, and therefore he's not allowed to eat osvo. So here, there's a little caveat, there's a little bit of a room for leniency because there is a machloket about it, right? We said liquids reheating on Shabbat is subject to a machloket between Rashba with Rambam against Rosh and Tur. So any isur, any prohibition that is a machloka in the rabbis, if it's a sur or not, if it's considered malacha or not, you can be lenient in the case of benefiting from it. Why? Because the whole nature of the prohibition of benefiting from something that was done through desecration of Shabbat, that is only rabbinic in nature. And whenever you have a doubt if this is a sur or not, so you have a doubt of if there is a rabbinic prohibition, safek derabanan, lekula. We say we are lenient in a doubtful case of rabbinic prohibition. Here, I don't know, according to Rambam, he did nothing wrong. According to Rosh and Tur, he did something wrong. This whole thing is derabanan. I don't know who the halach is like. So therefore you can say, safek derabanan lekula. But the problem is the tomato sauce, right? The tomato sauce, is tomato sauce cooked? Was it cooked one time before? Yes, it is. So therefore, since it was cooked one time before, Rambam says it's fine. You're allowed to put it in the pot.
What if they put regular water in? No.
Oh, water in the urn was cooked?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's okay. But water that was from Poland spring bottle,
They did that.
it wasn't cooked, right?
Can't eat it.
You can't eat
No,
it.
wait, it was. Well, it was
Wow.
cooked. Right.
Wow.
Poland spring water is cooked?
All water is cooked.
Yeah?
All water is boiled down, so all
Okay,
the bacteria.
okay, fine.
If
Okay.
that's the case, that means you can put hot water inside the earth.
No. We're talking about happened already. Talking about somebody did it already. Somebody did it. Yeah. But the avad, somebody did it already. Lechatchila, you should not do it from the beginning. You shouldn't do it. But if somebody did it already, so then that's where we're having this discussion. So it comes out, person did it already. Since you can use the rule, safek derabanan lekula, since some poskim say it's okay, then you're allowed to benefit from it. However, and when it comes, someone to ask you, there's a burning osvo in the house. Rabbichik, you learn in youth minyan, you learn halachot, you have a good rabbi. No. You tell them you were supposed to put a bag from before if you were nervous. Now that it already happened, put a pot under it. Or, like Nathan said, the Halacha Bura says, you are technically allowed to ask a goy to put water into it. Mutar l'sfaradi lomar b'shabbat legoy la'arot mayim chamim letoch hatafshil. You're allowed to tell a goy to put hot water into your osvo. But let's say you don't have that ability, so therefore you should not put hot water into it. For chachila, if somebody did it already, you're allowed to eat the osvo. Any questions?
Yeah, can you stir it?
Stir what?
Your osvo that's in a crock pot.
Crock pot, I said, different discussion, different time.
Can you stir the osvo that's on the blech?
Is it fully cooked?
Fire, there's a thing on top of it.
It's fully cooked?
Yeah.
Okay, I have to double check before I give an answer. Double check. I'll double check. I'll ask. I'll let you know. Yes?
Are you allowed to have a guy stir your osvo?
So dependent on that, it'll be that dependent on that question as well.
For sure, that's for sure.
Right, it'll be dependent on that question. Any other questions? Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen, Amen.